The next section of the Notations tab is symbols. Symbols can be got to by the Z shortcut. And it's worth noting the following. Symbols do not play back. Now there are ways to make your senyos and coders play back, which we'll talk about in future videos. But on their own, symbols do not play back. And there are dozens of them. Different ornaments, sticking indications, accordion symbols, different cadences, different percussion instrumentation, many in various techniques, pedal markings. Again, pedal markings are much better added from the lines menu in my opinion, but you can add them just as symbols so they won't play back. Different guitar frames, stop strings, repeat markings. It's a fairly long list. Now you'll notice that some symbols also appear in other menus. These are purely just the symbols and they have no playback effect. You can also, if we go into what looks like the older version of the symbols menu using the More function, create your own symbols, and we'll look at that in the Edit Symbols dialog. So I've swapped over into a smaller score so I can talk to you about note heads and note head types and how they can affect playback. Now in creating drum parts in the past we've looked at the specifics of having to use crossed note heads for hi-hats and cymbals, but the real question is why? So let's just play this piece back. So we've got a fairly good groove going on there. Now if I select this crash cymbal and move it up and down, you can hear that it's assigned to many different playback sounds. If I go into note heads and change the type to a normal round filled in note head, and I do exactly the same process, you can hear that they're not the same sounds at all. If I change the diamonds, you can hear there's even less associated with diamonds. So it's really important to get the right playback sounds and use the right type of note head. If I want to, I can change the whole bar to crosses, and again, that's really changed my playback entirely. You can see there are many different types of note head. The more common ones are obviously found at the top, filled in, crossed, diamonds. We also have many in different slash symbols for kind of slash guitar chords. Headless notes, silent notes, so you can have things on the score that don't play back, particularly useful for cued parts. Small notes with smaller note heads. Different percussion note heads, triangles, large stem slash chords. Now you can change the way these affect playback by editing the individual instruments, and we'll be looking at that in a future video. But for now, it's just worth knowing that you can change the note head and that the note head really affects the playback. One of my favourite features of Sibelius, which is very much aimed at the education market, is the ability to add the note names to the note heads. So if I just select these few bars here, add note names, selected passage will be fine, tells me exactly what it's done, and now I can zoom in and you can see the note names have been added to my selected area, which is very, very cool. Another feature firmly rooted in education is the ability to import graphics. Now, in previous versions of Sibelius, you were very much limited to the graphic files you could import. However, now, we have the ability to pretty much import anything we want. Let's drop that just over there. I can resize it if I want to, rotate it, position it anywhere I want on my score. Not terribly appropriate, but you can see how useful it can be to import some images onto your score. I also have a certain amount of control over the graphics that I import by being able to adjust the brightness, contrast, saturation, and the opacity of my graphics. Very handy. We've switched back to the string quartet score because I'd like to show you some of the beaming options. I've doctored this score slightly to demonstrate exactly how this works. So we can see here that we have a quaver, or eighth note rest, and an eighth note. And at the moment, there is no beam joining those two eighth notes. However, with the over rest option selected, I now have a solid beam joining those together. And if I want to show a stemlet, I can do there as well. So my three options are open, over rests, and over rest with stemlets. Obviously you can't have a stemlet where there is no beam. The last thing we'll look at are some of the bracket and bracing options within Sibelius. If I select all the instruments in my score and hit bracket, I can bracket those all together, showing they are part of the same system. If I undo that and just select the two violins, I can add a brace and brace those together. And if I want to add a sub bracket to the bottom three, I can do that there as well. Obviously, the more bracket and bracing options you add, the more chance there is that your score is going to look untidy, and that's not terribly good. I can go into my engraving rules pages and change different aspects of the bracket, sub-bracket and brace, like thickness, distance from system, and these are going to happen automatically for me every time I add a bracket, sub-bracket or brace within this score. So just to summarise, in this tutorial we've looked at the Notations tab, clefs, key signatures, bar lines and repeats, slurs and ties and what the difference is, note heads and how different note heads can be used to affect the playback sound, symbols menu, bars and beam groups, and brackets and braces. Hope to see you on the next video.